Phoenix Wright is the main character of the Ace Attorney series, also known as Gyakuten Saiban in Japan, which roughly translates to Turnabout Courtroom. The word turnabout is an important theme of the series, as the standard progression through an Ace Attorney case involves taking on incredible odds and somehow staging a turnabout in court to prove your client innocent. This is reinforced in the names for the cases in each game, which all incorporate the word turnabout in their case titles. Ace Attorney is the brainchild of Shu Takumi, who had joined Capcom alongside another industry legend, Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami. After directing the first half of Dino Crisis 1 and the entirety of Dino Crisis 2, Takumi was given free rein by Mikami to work on any project he liked with a small development team. Takumi opted for a game idea he'd been toying with for a while, a court drama built around cross-examining witnesses and pointing out contradictions in their statements. This concept would evolve into the first Gyakuten Saiban game, which was released for the Game Boy Advance in Japan in 2001. Two sequels would follow in 2002 and 2004, followed by a re-release of the first game the following year for Nintendo's new DS handheld in 2005. The DS port also saw the game translated for audiences for the first time outside of Japan, localized as Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. The sequels would also be localized for the DS in 2006 and 2008. You play as rookie defense attorney Phoenix Wright as he overcomes extraordinary and sometimes absurd odds in court to defend his clients and to discover the truth. Ace Attorney games are typically divided into two main portions: investigation segments where you talk to witnesses, poke around crime scenes, and gather evidence and clues, and trial segments, where you use all of the information and evidence you've gathered in court to point out inconsistencies in testimonies, and to poke holes in the prosecution's arguments. One of, if not the most recognizable parts of the series, is its dramatic use of word bubbles when taking actions, such as presenting evidence, cross-examining someone, and most famously, raising an objection. Objection! The Ace Attorney games are admittedly pretty niche, but if you were on the internet at all in the mid to late 2000s, you probably remember when the objection voice clip was a meme. The series has a passionate, devoted fan base which I'm proud to say I'm a part of, due in part to its amazingly written scenarios, as well as a memorable cast of characters, all with incredibly unique, memorable personalities. Phoenix Wright made his fighting game debut in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 as one of the 12 new characters added to the initial Marvel 3 roster. Before we get into everything his appearance in this game entails, I want to talk a bit about the specific character niche Phoenix occupies, and the legacy of that niche within the genre. So, before moving forward, let's start by looking back a bit. So, by most traditional fighting game metrics, Phoenix would qualify as a Joe character. A character meant to not be very effective in battle by design, often with humorous attacks or attack properties. I'd say Phoenix subjectively fits that bill, but there's a good deal more nuance to him than that. Phoenix covers a niche I'll refer to going forward as an Incidental Combatant. This is an ultra-specific character archetype that involves a character attacking by, well, not attacking, at least not directly. Instead of directly trying to pummel their opponent, the fighter is performing actions that, because the opponent is in the way, they happen to be incidentally injured by. This is a pretty smart direction to take someone like Phoenix in, as he's not really one for physical confrontations. Making him an incidental fighter is a smart way to implement him in a fighting game while also staying true to the character and the humor of his home series. Though Ultimate Marvel 3 was Phoenix's first appearance in the Versus series, and the fighting game altogether, Phoenix is a character that was very publicly made known by Capcom to have been considered for previous games, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom being the most prominent example. Concept art for him was shown in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom's Secret File, which conceptualized ideas like him attacking with word bubbles, though the developers lamented that there might be hitbox discrepancies considering worldwide audiences, since the objection word bubble is much larger in English-speaking countries than in Japan. They'd go on to mention in subsequent interviews that the biggest hurdle for Phoenix was trying to find a way to make him believably fight without betraying his character. They landed on making him an incidental fighter as a way to honor the series while letting them get really creative with his attacks. This technically wouldn't be the first time the series has dabbled with incidental combatants, however. Norimaru in Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter is another such character that dabbles with it. Norimaru admittedly has much more direct combat attacks, but some things just happen to incidentally hurt the opponent, like a banana peel he can throw out that can trip the opponent, Norimaru, or even Norimaru's own assist. The idea itself goes back even further in fighting games though. The example furthest back that I can think of is in the Sega CD version of Eternal Champions, with the secret unlockable character, Senator. Senator's moveset and character design is meant to parody American politicians, and this is reflected in his moveset. He throws literal red tape, puts down a podium, waves a flag, and even poses for photos in his moveset. It's all very wacky, but also really inspired. The decision to ultimately settle in that direction for Phoenix may have come from another character that was also planned for a versus game in Scrap. And perhaps not coincidentally, she's also in the same secret file flyer as Phoenix. Komugi of the Nurse Witch Komugi anime series from Tatsunoko was a character that was planned for Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Ultimate All-Stars and got pretty deep in development. However, because the development team worked on her in secret and didn't present her to the game's producer until late in development, they were forced to either cut her or Tekkaman Blade, with the team opting to include the latter instead. They didn't want the work done to be a waste though, so the secret file actually shows off her character model, as well as a near full rundown of what her moveset would have been. Komugi was also going to be an incidental combatant, with a moveset based around her magical girl abilities causing mishaps to happen that accidentally damaged the opponent. Considering Tatsunoko vs. Capcom and Marvel 3 more or less share the exact same development staff, I think it's safe to say that they used that concept as inspiration for Phoenix here. Phoenix's moveset, aside from being incidental motions and such, also reference a ton of animations and gags from the Ace Attorney series as well. His English voice actor in Marvel 3 is Sam Riegel. He's had a pretty long stint in the voice acting field thus far, serving as the voice of Donatello in just about any TMNT media associated with the 2003 series, Flynn in Tales of Vesperia, one of the many English voice actors for Rex Raptor and Tristan Taylor in Yu-Gi-Oh! Over the years, and Teddy in most English Persona 4 media from Persona 4 Arena onwards, to name a few, as well as being a regular on Critical Role. He notably isn't Phoenix's voice actor in the English dub of the Ace Attorney anime, that role going to Eric Vale instead. In a pretty godlike casting gag though, he does play Furio Tigre in the show's second season, a character whose most notable trait is that they can get away with masquerading as Phoenix because of their similar hair. His Japanese voice actor is Kosuke Tsurayumi. He's had a pretty lengthy career to date, having voiced Kiba in all associated Naruto media, Gordo in the Under Night in Birth games, and Junpei in pretty much all Persona 3 and 4 related media. He's also the voice of Yuri Lowe, the main protagonist of Tales of Vesperia, which is funny since Phoenix's English voice actor Sam Riegel also voices Yuri's best friend, the aforementioned Flynn. That's a neat coincidence. The original Game Boy Advance games were made with pretty small development teams on small budgets, so the voice clips in the original trilogy were all recorded by actual Capcom staff. Takumi himself provided the voice clips for Phoenix, while the first game's composer, Masakazu Sugimori, provided the voice for Manfred von Karma, a major character in the first game. Even series fan-favorite character Godot was voiced by former Capcom and Platinum Games legend Hideki Kamiya. This tradition was also carried over to the game's international localization, with many of Capcom USA staff providing the voice clips for the English and French releases of the game. Despite this game being Phoenix's one and only fighting game appearance, there's a ton of stuff to cover here. So, without any further ado, Phoenix's first character theme is an arrangement of Ryuichi Naruhodo, Objection 2001 from the first Ace Attorney game. This theme typically plays when you successfully raise an objection during court sequences in Ace Attorney 1, and also doubles as Phoenix's character theme in said game. Ryuichi Naruhodo is Phoenix's name in the original Japanese versions of Ace Attorney. At Shu Takumi's admittance, he's partially named after Ryuichi Sakamoto, a legendary Japanese musician that majorly influenced several styles of electronic music. He's also the man that scored what's, in my opinion, the greatest console startup screen of all time. His surname, Naruhodo, comes from a Japanese expression that translates to "I see" or "I understand." Takumi expressed that he wanted the surname to embody a character in a mystery story figuring something out and saying it to themselves. This sentiment actually carries over to Phoenix's English name, where it's localized as Wright, obviously meant to riff off of the word right spelled with an R, which can be used in the same context as Naruhodo in English-speaking countries. The localization team also mentioned that Phoenix was chosen to give him a unique first name, since all of the other ones that were pitched seemed a little bit too normal. If you have the Japanese release of the game, or set the language to Japanese in your Steam settings on the PC version, the game will refer to Phoenix as Naruhodo-kun. This makes him one of 4 characters in the game to have this distinction, the others being Shenko, Akuma, and Firebrand, going by their original names of Lele, Goki, and Radarama respectively. This localization change also extends to other parts of Phoenix's presentation in the game as well. I'll talk about them as they come up. Also worth noting is that every English voice actor for the main roster voiced 2 lines for tagging him in. In English, most characters address him as Mr. Wright, probably not to confuse him with the other Phoenix on the roster. But if you set the game to Japanese, they'll go with Naruhodo-kun instead. Now that I think about it, Marvel 3 is one of the first fighting games I can think of that allowed you to customize voice acting on such a granular level. I don't know if it was the first or not, but if anyone happens to remember any examples that predate it, please do let me know in the comments. Every Ace Attorney game has a different objection theme, with the title incorporating the year the respective game released. Note that I said this is Phoenix's first theme. We'll talk about that more a bit later, because that really does kind of need its own section. As I mentioned earlier, Phoenix is essentially an incidental combatant, but he also slots right into yet another fighting game archetype, the far more common stance character. For the unfamiliar, stance characters are defined by their ability to switch between attack and fighting styles on the fly, giving them a bit more complexity in how they're intended to optimally function. Some examples of stance characters in fighting games include Gen in Street Fighter, Zappa in Guilty Gear, and Idol in Killer Instinct. Here, Phoenix has 3 stances: Investigation Mode, Trial Mode, and Turnabout Mode. While he can freely switch between Investigation and Trial Mode, Turnabout Mode is essentially Phoenix's win condition install, and his entire game plan revolves around leveraging the first 2 modes in order to get to his Turnabout Mode as quickly and safely as possible. Because of how distinct his offensive and in some cases defensive options are in each mode, we'll tackle them one by one. Investigation Mode is Phoenix's default stance in the game, and always starts in this mode. Phoenix's flow in Marvel 3 is designed to emulate the progression of a typical Ace Attorney case, with investigating and gathering evidence being the first order of business, which Investigation Mode here is based off of. Phoenix's offensive options in this mode are at their most limited, as the goal in this mode is to gather 3 good pieces of evidence before progressing to Trial Mode. It's also worth noting Phoenix's health total. Being a regular guy among demons, superheroes, and literal gods, you'd think he'd be pretty squishy health-wise, but his health hits the 1 million mark, putting him on par with the likes of Ryu. This is probably a neat little in-joke referring to Phoenix's unusual physical resilience in the Ace Attorney games. He swallowed lockets that had a bit of poison in them, fallen from a great height into a ravine, been hit by a car and launched headfirst into a lamppost, among other things, yet he never walks away with more than just some minor injuries. Before we get into Phoenix's moves, let's talk about his throws. Unlike most other characters, Phoenix doesn't throw the opponent himself. Instead, this little guy comes out. This is Missile. He's a police dog that first appears in Case 4 of the first Ace Attorney game, Turnabout Goodbyes, though he pops up later in the series as well. Shu Takumi would later own a Pomeranian that he also named Missile, presumably after the one in Ace Attorney. The real-life Missile would go on to inspire the Pomeranian of the same name in Ghost Trick. Missile's an awesome character in that game, that's pretty much all I can say without spoiling things. Phoenix is a really fun character to look at in motion, because he has some of the most elaborate animations in the series, at least of the games to use 3D models. You'll never see them all in a proper match because they're made to cancel into each other smoothly, but if you let every animation play out, they have surprisingly long and detailed animation cycles. Many of his investigation mode normal animations involve him either searching the ground for clues or thumbing through some documents. Phoenix's launcher is also worth noting. It's a pretty massive sneeze.
I have an air combo! Cool!
If you don't cancel it into a super jump, he'll actually stand and wipe his nose before going back into his idle stance. This one's a deep cut reference to Ace Attorney 3, but I'll talk about that a bit more in detail later. His first command normal in this mode is Slip Up, done with forward and medium attack.
It's hard!
Phoenix slips on a banana peel and comically falls over, also knocking the opponent down. This one is actually an overhead, so it has to be blocked high. While it might just be here for the sake of comedy, it's worth noting that Norimaru, a character Phoenix is very much in the vein of here, as shown earlier, also had an attack involving a banana peel, so perhaps it's a shout out to that. Questioning is done with forward and heavy attack. Phoenix pauses for a second before shouting "Hold it" with a giant stylized word bubble showing up alongside it. This word bubble itself is the move's hitbox. There's a mechanic with this specific command normal and its variations in other modes that involve a hidden stun meter. Hitting an opponent with one of these command normals, be it on hit or on block, fills up the meter. If said invisible meter is maxed with this command normal, the opponent will be stunned for a short time. This move is inspired by the press mechanic in Ace Attorney. This is primarily done during cross-examinations when Phoenix needs to dig for more information from witness testimonies. One fun thing the DS and 3DS Ace Attorney games let you do was use the built-in microphones in the hardware to physically yell "Hold it" in order to press someone. Hold it. I feel like every fan of the series that experienced it on DS did this at least once, whether they admit it or not. This can also be done in the air as well, though it's done with down and heavy instead. If you switch Phoenix's voice acting in the game to Japanese via the game's audio options menu, the word bubbles for Phoenix's attacks will also change to their Japanese counterparts. Considering that the game's producer previously mentioned that not being sure how to handle the differences for this specific attack was one of the reasons he was left out of TVC, it's nice to see they eventually figured it out. Phoenix's first special move has Maya Fey run in and assist him. Actually, let's touch on her for a bit, shall we?
I've got a bad feel.
Maya Fey is Phoenix's trusty assistant and the younger sister of Phoenix's mentor, Mia Fey. After an incident has them cross paths and sees Maya on trial for murder, Phoenix steps in to defend her in court, and afterwards, she sticks around to help run Phoenix's law office. She's a disciple of the Korean spirit channeling technique, which allows her to communicate with and even channel the dead through her body, a trait that became more prominent over the course of the original Ace Attorney trilogy. Despite everything she goes through in the series, she remains upbeat, optimistic, and ready to help Nick however she can, Nick being her affectionate nickname for Phoenix. Doing a quarter circle forward motion in any attack summons her, but what she does is dependent on the strength of the attack button. Light attack is perhaps her most unique function. She uses her spiritual powers to conjure a stationary shield that can absorb a good amount of damage before dissipating.
Maya?
She can be knocked out of it, but it can take up to 250k points of damage before it ends. It's not subject to damage scaling though, so multi-hitting attacks like beams or characters with high damage block strings can knock her out of it rather quickly. Putting one of these up and standing directly in the middle of it makes for a decent method of safely gathering evidence. Pressing medium or heavy attack has Maya rush in and trip, knocking the opponent down. Maya hits OTG here, giving Phoenix a way to reliably relaunch opponents without the need of an assist. The only real difference between both versions is how far on screen she'll run before she falls over.
Maya?
You may have noticed the little folders above Phoenix's meter in the bottom left corner. These are Phoenix's evidence slots and they're critical for unlocking his win condition. Each evidence slot corresponds to a button combo. Slot 1 is light in special attack, slot 2 is medium in special attack, and slot 3 is heavy in special attack. Pressing any of these combos will have Phoenix search for evidence, or discard it if he already has evidence equipped to the corresponding slot. There's 3 types of evidence Phoenix can obtain: good evidence, bad evidence, and food. Good evidence is denoted by the evidence icon lighting up, while bad evidence is instead dim. Food will be instantly consumed and restores a bit of red life. As I mentioned earlier, Phoenix can use the same inputs he used to find evidence to discard it from the corresponding slot as well, throwing it at the opponent. The game plan is generally to get 3 pieces of good evidence before going into trial mode, as this fulfills the first half of the requirements for Turnabout Mode. Evidence gathering is a critical part of investigations in the Ace Attorney series, and I'm honestly kind of blown away at how well they managed to translate a concept so rooted in adventure games into a fighting game. We'll talk about the specific pieces of evidence there are later on when we discuss trial mode. Also, the sound effect that plays when collecting evidence is the same exact one that plays in Ace Attorney when you obtain evidence as well.
Attack! Any leads? Any leads? Any leads?
To switch Phoenix into trial mode, press down, down, and then the special button. Phoenix can switch between both modes interchangeably regardless of evidence collected. The sound effect that plays when using this is the same sound effect that usually plays when a character comes to a realization about something in Ace Attorney.
I got it!
Phoenix only has access to one hyper combo in investigation mode, Steel Samurai Maya Smelting.
Got a bad feeling. Maya? Maximum!
Maya drops down out of nowhere and angrily runs at the opponent, waving her fists. This doesn't do a ton of damage, but it can lock the opponent down, and furthermore, can set up some nasty unblockables. Do note that Phoenix has access to this super in every one of his modes. We'll talk about the Steel Samurai a bit later, since they'll come up again. So, now that we're in trial mode, some of Phoenix's normals change, notably some of his heavy attacks. He also has a new command normal, Illuminating Point, done by pressing heavy and pressing it again as soon as it makes contact with the opponent. This is a soft launcher of sorts, so you can actually do 2 short jump loops off of this before transitioning into an air combo. The sound effect that plays when using this is the same light bulb sound effect that plays when a character in Ace Attorney gets an idea about something.
First attack! Wait, got it!
He also gets an extension to his crouching heavy, note scribbling.
No problem.
Okay. Suspicious. Suspicious. I got it.
No problem.
Okay.
Be aware that this only causes a soft knockdown. He can press heavy as a follow-up to a jumping heavy as well during an air combo.
Wait, I got it. Explain this. Yes. Explain this. Air combo.
Cross-examination is the trial mode version of questioning, with the only difference being that it deals more stun damage, so you need at minimum 3 of these to guarantee a stun on your opponent. This can, like before, be done in the air as well.
Wait, got it. Air danger. I have it. Great.
Paperwork is a new move Phoenix gets access to in this mode, done with a quarter circle forward and attack. Phoenix throws out a bunch of paperwork that arcs upwards.
Please, take a look. Yes.
He has a variant of this that arcs downwards. done by doing a quarter circle back motion and attack.
More evidence. Yes.
Keep in mind that despite the move names, these aren't overheads or lows, but mids. Press the Witness is done with a Dragon Punch motion and attack.
Yes. Cool.
Phoenix walks forwards while tapping some papers before presenting them. The animation of him tapping the papers is taken from this animation in Ace Attorney. It has a pretty slow startup though, so keep that in mind. Phoenix can also present evidence in this mode, and this is where things get interesting. Phoenix can present good and bad evidence. If you present bad evidence, you get a funny little fail animation that leaves you wide open to attack. However, presenting good evidence will yield a certain type of projectile depending on what the evidence is. Let's talk about all of the evidence, good and bad. First, there's the document folder.
I will submit the evidence.
This is good evidence, and when presented, produces a projectile that hovers for a bit before detonating, either on contact with the opponent or after a set amount of time. The icon itself is the same one used in Ace Attorney for evidence such as autopsy reports. Next is the knife. This is also good evidence, and when presented, shoots out a projectile that fans out in 3 directions. Knives are one of the more common murder weapons in the Ace Attorney series. Next is a simple wristwatch. This is good evidence, and when presented, fires a projectile straight at the opponent at a pretty decent speed. A watch wasn't a piece of evidence that I'm aware of in the original Ace Attorney trilogy, but observing a watch in a photograph led to a critical discovery being made in the first case of Ace Attorney 3. Here, we have a Servbot statue. This, unfortunately, counts as bad evidence, however. How could Servbots ever be bad, though? Next is a bottle of some kind. Of what, no one knows for sure, but it might be grape juice, which is brought up a few times in Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, the 4th Ace Attorney game, as Phoenix's favorite drink. This is bad evidence. Next up is a pair of glasses. They look pretty expensive, but they count as bad evidence. For a while, I used to think these were Wesker sunglasses, but these notably have no tint, so they're just regular old eyeglasses. Next is a photo. Sounds simple, but you'd be surprised at how many times a simple picture has unraveled entire murder plots in the Ace Attorney games. Take this photograph from the great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. To the average person that's never played this is a pretty unremarkable photo. To people that have played it though, this is probably one of the most haunting images in the entire series. This is good evidence, and presenting this produces a full-screen multi-hitting beam projectile. Next up is a broken vase, and this is good evidence. Presenting this conjures a projectile that arcs upwards before coming back down. I don't think this is referencing any specific evidence in the series, but vases have played a part in a few Ace Attorney cases, including a memorably frustrating puzzle in the first game's 5th case, and as an important part of testimony in the 3rd game's 3rd case. Next is just a plant. This is bad evidence. Though it's not the same kind of plant, this is probably a good time to bring up Charlie, the name of the plant Phoenix keeps in his office and can be examined in most Ace Attorney games. Charlie may be a homage to Chuck the Plant, a recurring background plant in a few LucasArts point-and-click adventure games, like Maniac Mansion and Day of the Tentacle. Occasionally, Phoenix will pick up some meat, which restores his red health. This is instantly consumed and doesn't take up an evidence slot. Next, there's a plunger. This is bad evidence. Again, I don't believe this is referencing anything specific, but it does bring to mind a minor gag of Phoenix having a minor obsession with cleaning his office bathroom in the 3rd game. Next is the cell phone, which counts as good evidence. When presented, 3 projectiles come out and hover for a bit before firing beams aimed at the opponent. This is generally considered to be Phoenix's best piece of evidence and works as a great zoning tool. Cell phones show up a few times in the Ace Attorney series, though Phoenix is old-fashioned and never really uses anything high-tech in those regards, even way later on in the series. He has a neat little Steel Samurai ringtone though. Speaking of, the final possible piece of evidence Phoenix can obtain is a statue of the Steel Samurai, the lead character of an in-universe pastiche of tokusatsu TV shows. Maya and a few other characters in the series are huge fans of it. According to an interview with Shu Takumi, the idea for this character came very early in the first game's development, before the tone or direction of the game was even set in stone. I've always thought that if future Capcom crossover fighters wanted to include another Ace Attorney character that wasn't Law affiliated, they should just go with the Steel Samurai. Don't even bother explaining who's in the costume or why they can fight, just go for it. A certain uptight prosecutor in the series is also secretly a huge Steel Samurai fanboy, which is kind of endearing. Do note that all evidence, bad or good, do the same amount of damage if discarded and thrown at the opponent in investigation mode. Phoenix gets access to a new hyper combo in trial mode, Order in the Court.
Maximum! Any leads? Any leads? I got it! Order in the court! Objection overruled!
A giant, scary-looking version of the judge from the Ace Attorney series brings a gavel down onto the opponent, though Phoenix gets knocked down as well. He doesn't take any damage, however, and he recovers far quicker than the opponent. This is a workable combo ender in trial mode, and even if comboing in investigation mode, if you get a hard knockdown, you usually have enough time to mode change into trial mode and initiate this hyper combo.
Objection overruled! Dude!
This super is based on the opening of the second Ace Attorney game, where Phoenix has a nightmare about the judge who towers over Phoenix before bringing down his gavel on him just before he wakes up. It's a delightfully silly moment, and I'm glad to see they immortalized it in the Versus games. If you've managed to collect 3 pieces of good evidence in investigation mode, you're not quite out of the woods yet. Doing so upgrades cross-examination to Bridge to the Turnabout, and replaces the Hold It word bubble with the iconic Objection bubble.
Objection!
Bridge to the Turnabout has a double meaning here. For one, it's literally the attack that leads into Turnabout mode. However, it's also a direct reference to Bridge to the Turnabout, the final case of Ace Attorney 3 and the last case overall of the Phoenix Wright trilogy. If you ask an Ace Attorney fan what the best case in the series is, there's a 99% chance they'll say Bridge to the Turnabout. And I'm here to tell you that those people are 100% correct. The first 3 Phoenix Wright games form what I honestly think is one of the greatest video game trilogies of all time, and the third game in particular is generally cited as the best game in the series. A big part of it comes down to the final case. It ties together every lingering plot thread from previous games while also somehow managing to fit in really cool fan service and moments that really bring the entire series full circle in the best way possible. I can't recommend the Ace Attorney games enough, and implore anyone that hasn't played to give it a try. If you stick with it, the payoff in the third game is absolutely worth the effort, though the first 3 games in general are stellar. In order for Phoenix to get into Turnabout mode though, you have to successfully land Bridge to the Turnabout on your opponent. Once you do though, Turnabout mode represents the part in an Ace Attorney game where you've managed to put your case together, use their evidence to point out contradictions, and now all you have to do is bring it home. Phoenix goes from being a defensive fighter in his previous modes to being an all-out attacker here. Hell, even his idle pose is more confident. All of Phoenix's normals and command normals are faster and stronger, but he also gets some additional things on top of that. Most notable is his heavy attack. Using this in Turnabout mode while standing, jumping, or crouching produces a giant glowing finger made of energy. The standing version causes a hard knockdown.
No problem!
That's illegal!
The crouching version wall bounces.
Contradiction! Contradiction!
And the jumping version causes a ground bounce.
See you in court!
This becomes one of Phoenix's most oppressive normals. Use it liberally. Also, note this particular frame of this attack. It's recreating the finger point from the series logo, complete with the little glimmer of light at the tip of the pointer finger. Bridge to the Turnabout gets upgraded to Pursuit in this mode.
I have air danger! Cool! Objection! Objection!
It's now incredibly fast and fills up 65% of that stun meter. The move name is likely referencing a specific song from the Ace Attorney soundtrack, but we'll talk about that later. Phoenix's Evidence gets speed and power buffs, but can now also combo into itself, making for great pressure.
The evidence! I will still recognize this! I will still recognize this! I will still recognize this! Danger! Level 2!
Paperwork gets upgraded to Paperwork Storm now, and it does more damage and has better range.
Please, take a look! Cool! Please, take a look!
The same goes for the low version of this as well.
More evidence! Good! More evidence! Good!
Press the Witness is now Break the Witness.
Yes, yes! Danger! Sweet!
While it still has a lengthy startup, this does absurd damage. It's actually the single most damaging special move in the entire game, and on top of that, it now has a wall bounce. If you can score a stun with Pursuit in the time it takes to get into Turnabout mode, it's a great way to use this as a combo starter. Last, but certainly not least, Phoenix gets access to his level 3 in this mode, Ace Attorney.
No alibi, no justice, no dream, no hope! It's time to pay for your crimes! Take that!
This level 3 has a 0 frame startup, can hit literally anywhere on screen instantly, and can OTG. On top of all of those things, it's also the second highest damaging attack in the entire game, second to Virgil's Dark Angel level 3. The threat of this move is the biggest reason you want to get into Turnabout mode. Unlike Virgil, however, Phoenix can actually build meter in his install that allows him to access his level 3, though you'll want to be quick about it as Turnabout mode lasts for a little over 20 seconds. The super itself is themed after how Ace Attorney trials usually end, with Phoenix proving beyond a shadow of a doubt who the culprit is, and said culprit usually having a theatrical breakdown of some sort. I should also talk about Turnabout mode's other notable feature. Phoenix is one of only 2 playable non-boss characters in the entire series with 2 character themes that can play in any given match. The other being Soki in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Cross Generation of Heroes, who does the same with his level 3 install. Like Soki in that game, Phoenix's exclusive Turnabout mode theme overrides any and all other music while it's active. If you tag Phoenix out while he's in Turnabout mode, the theme will still play, and it won't stop until Phoenix is tagged back in and either ends Turnabout mode or is KO'd. This theme is an arrangement of Pursuit, Cornered, from the first Ace Attorney game. This typically plays at the climax of cases, usually when a huge revelation is made, and Phoenix is able to definitively bring something big to light. Ace Attorney games in general have consistently fantastic music, but if there's any Ace Attorney song that's transcended the confines of the series, it's this one. You've probably heard this song in passing at least once if you've been on the internet in the last 2 decades, even if you weren't aware of where it's from. It was really prominent in the mid to late 2000s when the series was still pretty prominent in meme culture. Its incorporation here really ties together Phoenix's design in this game, and tells me that the developers not only understood the assignment when including him, but are probably huge fans of the series themselves. Phoenix's first assist is Paperwork.
Sorry.
Crossover assist.
Sorry.
His second assist is Press the Witness.
Crossover assist.
Yes, sorry.
His third assist is a unique assist attack. Get him, Missile.
Crossover assist.
Sorry.
Missile runs along the bottom of the screen and attacks the opponent as he runs by. This hits OTG, but isn't very practical when used as one, due to the time it takes for Missile to travel across the screen. Its true utility is in the fact that this assist also hits low, so you can set up some tricky unblockables with this. In the first few weeks of the game's release on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, Phoenix had an additional benefit in Turnabout Mode before it was nerfed in a patch. All of Phoenix's assists while in Turnabout Mode were 100% invincible. This was especially notable, because Ultimate Marvel 3 overall went out of its way to remove invincibility from two prominent assists from the vanilla release of the game, Hagar's Lariat and Tron Bond's Gustav Fire. It really says a lot that both the EVO 2011 Marvel 3 champion and the runner-up ran the former and the latter on their teams respectively. Maybe they thought Phoenix having it was too strong of a tool, or maybe they just wanted to remove that assist property from the game altogether. Either way, it definitely hurt Phoenix's already small usage. Phoenix has some of the most fun color variants in the series, as there are references to other characters in Ace Attorney, and even some other Capcom franchises. Even cooler, both Maya and Missile also get unique color variations separate from Phoenix that also reference other characters. Before getting into the colors, I really just want to commend the development team for going so hard with the little details in regards to Phoenix. Little details like this go a long way with me, and I'd like to think I'm not the only Ace Attorney fan within that admittedly small Ace Attorney and fighting game fan Venn diagram that thinks so. I'm gonna go into a bit more details for these colors than I usually do, because I'm exactly that kind of Ace Attorney fan. Phoenix's color 2 is based off of Miles Edgeworth, prosecutor and rival the Phoenix in the original trilogy. While Phoenix is the star of the series and one of the most popular characters in the series, Edgeworth is flat out the most popular Ace Attorney character, and for good reason. His character development through the series is a sight to behold, and it's probably not a stretch to say he's the best written character in the entire series. It can be argued that the first game is more about Edgeworth than it is Phoenix, really. Edgeworth's also, like, my third favorite video game character of all time, so yeah, I'm totally biased. His popularity was enough to grant him his own spin-off series, Ace Attorney Investigations, or Gyakuten Kenji as it's known in Japan, where Edgeworth investigates crime scenes. Sadly, the second game is at the time of this recording, the only major Ace Attorney game to have never left Japan. Capcom's been on a remaster kick lately, and against all odds, we even got the great Ace Attorney duology localized, so maybe we'll see it come over one day. There is a fan translation out there if you have the means though. Maya's color 2 is based off of Mia Fey, Phoenix's mentor and Maya's older sister. Mia taught Phoenix everything it means to be a lawyer, and instilled in him the idea that a defense attorney needs to believe in their client no matter what. Mia is also a playable character in Ace Attorney 3, where we get to see her as a rookie lawyer in flashback cases that end up tying into the overarching narrative of the game. Missile's alternate colors are based on fellow Marvel 3 quadruped Amaterasu. His color 2 is based on Ami's color 2. Phoenix's color 3 is based off of Detective Dick Gumshoe, one of my favorite naming gags in the entire series. Gumshoe is a homicide detective that usually ends up investigating the cases Phoenix and the resident prosecutors get involved with. While he's technically on the opposing side, Gumshoe's a good man that's fiercely loyal to Edgeworth in particular. If something is fishy though, and within his power to help with, he'll occasionally help Phoenix out, even if it means he'll get reprimanded. And boy does that ever happen. Edgeworth has cut this man's salary so many times he sees instant ramen as a luxury food. Poor guy. Maya's color 3 is based off of Franziska von Karma, the main prosecutor of the second Ace Attorney game, Justice for All. Franziska is a no-nonsense prodigy, and the daughter of Edgeworth's adoptive father, Manfred von Karma. Her trademark is her whip, which she can and will use in court on just about anyone, even the judge or her own witnesses. Franziska was also actually considered for Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, and unlike Phoenix, the development team flat out said that coming up for a moveset for her would have been incredibly easy thanks to her whip. However, she was dropped alongside Phoenix after they ran into a wall trying to implement him. Missile's color 3 is identical to Ami's. Color 4 is based off of Larry Butts, Phoenix's childhood friend. Larry's known Phoenix since childhood, and he's been a scatterbrained but well-meaning goofball for about as long as well. Larry is also the very first client Phoenix took on, being the defendant in the very first case in the Ace Attorney games. There's an in-series saying Phoenix occasionally invokes: if something smells, it's usually the butts. And well, that's usually right. Maya's Color 4 is based off of the waitress outfit for Très Bien, a restaurant that features in the third case of Ace Attorney 3. Maya dons the outfit in order to help chase down a lead in that case, and it's also where the defendant, Maggie Bird, also worked. Maggie's a recurring character in the series that's upbeat and good-natured, but also has some of the worst luck of any character in the series. That case is only the second time she was accused of murder. Way down the line, the outfit would be made available as a DLC costume for Athena Sykes in Ace Attorney 6, Spirit of Justice. As always, Missile shares Color 4 with Ami. Phoenix's Color 5 is based on fan-favorite character Godot. Godot is the main prosecutor of the third Ace Attorney game, Trials and Tribulations. He's a mysterious man who seems to have a personal vendetta against Phoenix, and makes no attempt to hide that fact in court. He wears a mask due to a previous injury, but his most notable trait is his love of coffee, which he always seems to have an unlimited supply of, even in court. There's not much more I can say about him that isn't going into spoiler territory, but I'll say this: there's definitely more to him than meets the eye. He also has one of the best character themes in a series filled with absurdly good character themes, so that's saying a lot. Maya's Color 5 is based on Kay Faraday from Ace Attorney Investigations, Edgeworth's spin-off game. Kay is a self-proclaimed thief of the truth, and assists Edgeworth in a few of his investigations. She actually first met Edgeworth back when she was a kid, though Edgeworth doesn't remember at first. She's a really fun character, and I wish more people had the opportunity to play the Edgeworth games because they're really fun. Maybe in a collection someday. Missile's Color 5 is, you guessed it, the same as Ami's. Phoenix's Color 6 is incredible. It's based on Sissel, the main protagonist of Ghost Trick: Phantom Detective, a mystery adventure/puzzle game also designed by Shu Takumi, originally released for the Nintendo DS. Sissel is an amnesiac spirit that can possess objects and can communicate with recently departed spirits, and go back 4 minutes in time to try to prevent their deaths. These abilities, called Ghost Tricks, help him to save the life of a woman named Lynn, who serves as the inspiration for Maya's Color 6. Ghost Trick is a really fantastic game that not enough people played when it originally released for the DS. Thankfully, it was remastered a few months ago, now running on Capcom's RE engine, and with the ability to change between the original DS soundtrack and the new rearranged soundtrack. If you want an inventive, really well-written game with some genuinely great plot twists, I highly recommend playing it. Missile's Color 6 is Ami's default color. That's a neat touch, though it would have been neat to see the Ghost Trick version of Missile instead, though thinking about it, that probably would have necessitated a new model. Phoenix's alternate costume is a direct reference to Turnabout Memories, the first case of Ace Attorney 3. Ace Attorney 3 started the series' tradition of flashback cases that take place before but are still related to the main event of the game, and in Ace Attorney 3's case, sees you take control of a young Mia Fey, taking on her second ever case, defending a young college student accused of murder. The college student in question is a younger, less in control of his emotions Phoenix Wright, wearing a sweater that his then girlfriend knitted for him, with a large P in the middle that stands for Phoenix. In the Japanese version of Ace Attorney 3, this says Ryu instead, being short for Ryuichi, and this gets reflected in the Japanese version of Marvel 3 as well. He's wearing a mask because at the time of that specific Ace Attorney case, he'd been dealing with a bad cold, and was instructed by his doctor to wear one as to not pass it on to other people. However, he still has pretty hilarious sneezing fits every now and then, and this would become the inspiration for his launcher in Marvel 3. Told you I'd eventually circle back to that. There's an additional little detail I'm fond of with this costume specifically. If you use his launcher, look closely at Phoenix's character model. His mask comically flies off of his face when he sneezes, the exact same way it does when he sneezes in Ace Attorney 3. It's the little details, man.
Miss Walters, your witness.
Soon the defense will rest, her fist upon your face.
It's do or die. Fight!
It takes more than brute strength to make your case in court. Man or demon, all are equal under the law.
It's do or die. Fight!
Oh, look at that. I guess you can beat the devil.
The Demon Prosecutor bit here is a reference to the first Ace Attorney game, where Edgeworth, known for his ruthlessness and spotless record in court, is referred to by the public as the Demon Prosecutor.
Give up your life of crime.
Laws! MODOK is above the law!
It's do or die. Fight!
Battle, it's not a question of guilty or not guilty.
And here is Phoenix's ending. Phoenix's ending in particular seems to be a continuation of She-Hulk's ending, which Phoenix himself had a cameo in. I'm going to get a touch personal here for a bit. The Ace Attorney games are really important to me. They were a really warm blanket during a really uncertain and stressful time in my life, and being a big fighting game enjoyer, I was beyond overjoyed when he finally got into Ultimate Marvel 3. Playing as him for the first time, and seeing all of the little details in his moveset, and his general presentation is one of my fondest fighting game memories. And in all honesty, Phoenix was the character that made me start this video series in the first place. But I wanted to start with other characters because I knew nothing about video editing, and I really wanted to make sure that when I eventually took Phoenix on, I could do him justice, no pun intended. There's so much love poured into the characters in this series, even in Marvel Infinite to a degree, and I thought it was a shame that there were very few, if any, people talking about it the same way people do for games like Smash Bros. Or even Dragon Ball FighterZ. So here we are. This is normally why I talk about how faithfully Phoenix is implemented in the game, and how it's a perfect representation of the Ace Attorney gameplay loop. But honestly, I think the video illustrates it better than I could ever gush about it here. I wholeheartedly believe Phoenix is one of the most well-realized characters in fighting game history. Is he top tier? No. But he's fun as all hell to use and somehow still isn't even the worst character in the game. Phoenix's appearance in this game actually kickstarted what started as a small bump in notoriety for the series that blossomed into it being more successful than it's ever been. Phoenix would appear in another crossover game shortly after Marvel 3, starring alongside fellow Nintendo DS series protagonist Professor Layton, in Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney on the Nintendo 3DS. He and Maya appear as a solo unit in Project Cross Zone 2, and some of their moveset in that game is inspired by their appearance in this game. Ace Attorney got its 5th mainline game about 2 years after Marvel 3, which was notable, as the last mainline game before that was Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, which had released about 7-ish years prior. The series has been remastered various times over the years, with the most recent remasters of the original trilogy becoming the most successful Ace Attorney release of all time, selling 2.6 million units, which, by the way, is higher than any single release of a Mega Man game. The series also has a manga, which generally does its own thing, and an anime series that does largely adapt the first 3 games. There's one episode in particular that actually features one of the few times Capcom's acknowledged anything Dino Crisis related in the last 2 decades, so that's neat. And yeah, we're still in the Ace Attorney 7 waiting room here, and who knows if that'll ever happen. But Capcom clearly still cares about the series. Given it localized, the thought to be impossible to release overseas great Ace Attorney games in 2021. And we're also getting the second set of Ace Attorney games released on current consoles as the Apollo Justice Ace Attorney trilogy. Notable in that it'll be the first time Ace Attorney 5 and 6 will be available in a physical format outside of Japan. Considering at one point in time we weren't even getting entire games localized to begin with, that's a vote of confidence in the series from Capcom if I've ever seen one. That's going to do it for this video. I try to do my very best with every video I work on, but I tried to go as above and beyond as possible as I could for this one, and I genuinely hope you all enjoy it. Take care, stay safe, play Ace Attorney if you haven't already, and I'll see you next video.